Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. And today, I'm going to give my review of Wrestlemania 7. Starting off the evening, we're going to go to our first match of the night. It is a tag team matchup. It is the Rockers versus Haku and the Barbarian. I thought it was a good opening matchup for Wrestlemania 7. Back and forth matchup between both teams, with the Rockers keeping the pace of the match. Marty Jannetty ends up hitting a Hurricane Rana on the Barbarian with help from Shawn Michaels. Barbarian then hits a press slam on Marty Jannetty. Marty then goes for a top rope maneuver on the Barbarian, but the Barbarian ends up turning it into a power slam. Rockers then hit a double drop kick, sending the Barbarian out of the ring. Shawn Michaels then capitalizes on this, hits a crossbody off the top rope on Haku, pinning him for the 3. And your winners of the match are the Rockers. Hats off to the Rockers for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night as well. It is the Texas Tornado versus Dino Bravo. I thought this was a good match as well. Back and forth matchup between both the Tornado and Bravo, with the Texas Tornado keeping the pace of the match. Dino then hits a sidewalk slam on the Tornado. Tornado then gets up, applies the claw on Dino Bravo, and then the Texas Tornado ends up hitting the finish on Dino Bravo, pinning him for the 3. And your winner of the match is the Texas Tornado. Hats off to the Texas Tornado for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night as well. It is the Warlord versus the British Bulldog. I thought this was an okay match. Back and forth matchup between both the Warlord and the Bulldog, with the Warlord keeping the pace of the match. Warlord then hits a gut wrench suplex on the Bulldog. Warlord then applies a full Nelson, but Bulldog breaks the hold. And then Bulldog hits his signature power slam on the Warlord, pinning him for the 3, and your winner of the match is the British Bulldog. Hats off to the British Bulldog for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is for the WWE Tag Team Championships. It is the Nasty Boys versus the Hart Foundation. I thought this was a good match. Back and forth matchup between both the Nasty Boys and the Hart Foundation. Bret Hart hits a Luthez press on Jerry Sags. Nasty Boys then are keeping the pace of the match. Brian Knobbs then goes to hit Hart with the megaphone, but missed and hits Sags. Sags then gets up, hits Neidhart with the megaphone, with the referee being distracted. Brian Knobbs then goes for the cover, pins for the 3, and your winners of the match, and at that time, new WWE Tag Team Champions, are the Nasty Boys. Hats off to the Nasty Boys for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Jake Roberts versus Rick Martel. Both in this matchup, both Jake Roberts and Rick Martel were both blindfolded in this matchup. The match itself was okay. Back and forth matchup between both Jake Roberts and Rick Martel, with Martel keeping the pace of the match. He ends up applying a Boston Crab on Jake the Snake Roberts. Jake then breaks the hold, and then Jake ultimately hits his signature DDT on Rick Martel, pinning him for the 3. And your winner of the match is Jake the Snake Roberts. Hats off to Jake the Snake Roberts for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night as well. It is Jimmy Superfly Snuka versus The Undertaker. This was a good match, pretty much a glorified squash match. Undertaker was keeping the pace throughout the entire match, with Undertaker hitting his signature Tombstone Piledriver on Jimmy Superfly Snuka, pinning him for the 3. And your winner of the match is The Undertaker. Hats off to The Undertaker for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is a career-ending match. It is the Ultimate Warrior versus Macho Man Randy Savage. I thought this was a great match. Back and forth matchup between both the Warrior and Randy Savage, with the Warrior keeping the pace of the match. Sherry ends up attacking Warrior ringside. Randy then hits a running knee, taking out the referee. Sherry then goes to hit Warrior, but instead hits Randy with the shoe. Elizabeth then is shown sitting ringside, worrying about Randy Savage. Randy then hits 5 elbow drops on the Ultimate Warrior off the top rope. Warrior then gets up, hits a press slam on Randy Savage, as well as his signature splash. Warrior then hits a shoulder tackle on Randy, pinning him for the 3. And your winner of the match is the Ultimate Warrior. After the match, though, Sherry is frustrated and ends up attacking Randy Savage, which causes Miss Elizabeth to leave her seat in the crowd, to run down the aisle, to enter the ring to attack Sensational Sherry. Randy's getting confused on who was attacking him, whether it was Sensational Sherry or Miss Elizabeth. And then both Miss Elizabeth and Randy Savage both embrace in the middle of the ring. The crowd goes crazy. It was a great moment. Fantastic moment. Fantastic match. But that Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth moment, that will live on in WrestleMania like history, man. It was a great moment. Randy Savage finally rejoices with Miss Elizabeth, the first lady of professional wrestling. It was awesome to see, man. And again, hats off to the Ultimate Warrior for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Kitawa, I might be pronouncing this wrong, Kitawa and Tenryu versus Demolition. The match itself was a good match. Back and forth matchup between both teams, with Demolition keeping the pace of the match. Tenryu ends up hitting an enziguri, and Tenryu ultimately hits a signature powerbomb on Smash, pinning him for the 3. And your winners of the match are Kitawa and Tenryu. Hats off to that team for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is for the WWE Intercontinental Championship. It is Mr. Perfect versus the Boss Man. I thought it was a good matchup. Back and forth matchup between both Mr. Perfect and Boss Man, with Mr. Perfect keeping the pace of the match. Boss Man ends up hitting Perfect with a belt. Perfect and Boss Man then both exchange in the middle of the ring. Bobby Heenan then wants to ring the bell. Perfect then goes for a perfect plex, but Boss Man ends up turning it into a roll-up. Andre the Giant makes his way down the aisle. Perfect then takes off the top turnbuckle. Andre then hits Perfect with the title, with the referee being distracted. Haku and the Barbarian are here. They end up attacking the Big Boss Man, and this match ends in disqualification, and your winner is the Big Boss Man. Hats off to the Boss Man for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night as well. It is Earthquake versus Greg the Hammer Valentine. I thought it was an okay matchup. Pretty much Earthquake was keeping the pace throughout the entire match. He ends up hitting a power slam on Greg the Hammer Valentine. Greg then hits multiple elbows on the Earthquake. Earthquake then hits an elbow drop on Greg the Hammer Valentine, which allows Earthquake to hit his signature splash on Greg the Hammer Valentine, pinning him for the 3. And your winner of the match is the Earthquake. Hats off to the Earthquake for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night as well. It is Ted DiBiase versus Virgil, with Roddy Piper in the corner of Virgil. The match itself was an okay matchup. Back and forth matchup between both DiBiase and Virgil, with Virgil keeping the pace of the match. DiBiase then hits a devastating pile driver on Virgil in the middle of the ring. DiBiase then pushes Roddy Piper, sitting ringside, which the referee ends up seeing this, and Ted DiBiase gets distracted, and your winner of the match due to count out is Virgil. Hats off to Virgil for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is the Mountie versus Tito Santana. This was an okay matchup. Back and forth matchup between both the Mountie and Tito Santana, with Tito keeping the pace of the match. But Mountie ends up hitting Tito with a pipe, with the referee being distracted. Pins him for the 3. And your winner of the match is the Mountie. Hats off to the Mountie for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our main event of the evening. This is the main event of WrestleMania 7. It is Sergeant Slaughter defending the WWE Championship against Hulk Hogan. I thought this was an okay matchup. Back and forth matchup between both Hogan and Slaughter, with Hogan keeping the pace of the match. Slaughter ends up hitting Hogan with a chair shot, which ends up, Hogan being busted wide open for the chair shot. But Hogan ends up hitting his signature leg drop on Sergeant Slaughter, pinning him for the 3, and your winner of the match, and at that time new WWE Champion, is Hulk Hogan. A couple of things I want to say about WrestleMania 7, man. Number one, in my honest opinion, I don't think WrestleMania 7 was all that good. And to be honest with you, WrestleMania 8 wasn't all that good either. And to be honest with you, even though this is WrestleMania 7, I'm just going to go ahead and say this. The main event of WrestleMania 8 should not have been Hogan and Vicious. It should have been, I believe it was Randy Savage versus Ric Flair for the WWE Championship. That should have been the main event. So I don't know why they booked Hogan and Sid Vicious as the main event. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure Sid and Hogan were the main event in that WrestleMania 8, if I'm not mistaken. But as far as WrestleMania 7, this wasn't a bad WrestleMania. It was okay. It wasn't the best WrestleMania, but it definitely was not the worst. The Rockers versus Haku and Barbarian to open up WrestleMania 7 was a really good opening matchup. It was great to see Kerry Von Erich in a matchup against Dino Bravo, the Texas Tornado. It's always great to see, any of the Von Erichs in a match. Again, the Nasty Boys versus the Hart Foundation for the WWE Tag Team Championships was a really good matchup. Big fan of the Hart Foundation. And the one match, at least one of the matches on here that I was not a big fan of was the Jake Roberts and Rick Martel match, because they were both blindfolded, and I'm not a big fan of the gimmick matches or the gimmick pay-per-views. I'm just not a big fan of them, especially the matches. The gimmick matches are just downright horrendous, man. They're not needed, nor are they wanted. So I don't know why they booked that match, but it was just horrendous. Undertaker versus Jimmy Snuka. If I'm not mistaken, this is a part of Undertaker's WrestleMania streak that is just legendary in professional wrestling. So it was great to see Undertaker in a WrestleMania matchup. Ultimate Warrior versus Randy Savage. The main event was Hogan versus Slaughter, but I'm going to tell you right now, for me, the main event for WrestleMania 7, hands down, was the Ultimate Warrior versus Randy Savage. It told a phenomenal story. And the fallout from that, Miss Elizabeth, running down the aisle, getting in the ring, attacking Sensational Sherry, and then both Miss Elizabeth and Randy Savage finally embracing in the middle of the ring. The crowd erupts, they go crazy. That, to me, is the main event of WrestleMania 7. Just a fantastic match. Even throughout that match, even when Ultimate Warrior almost hit the finish on Randy Savage and couldn't get the pin, it was almost as if Warrior was losing his power, if you will. He was like looking up in the ceiling, wondering why he just didn't finish Randy Savage like he, does everybody else. And, he almost got a 3 count, but, Randy Savage ended up counting out for a 2. It was crazy. It was a great match. It told a hell of a story. But that, to me, is the main event for me, in my opinion, for WrestleMania 7. As far as giving WrestleMania 7 a rating from 1 out of 10, I'm going to give it a solid 6, man. I don't think it was the worst WrestleMania, but it definitely was not the best. And I know I've said that a whole hell of a lot, but it just was not the best WrestleMania. And it definitely was not the worst. There's a lot more worse WrestleManias than WrestleMania 7, in my honest opinion. But I'm going to have to give WrestleMania 7 a solid 6 at best. But this is my review of WrestleMania 7. I hope you guys are out there staying safe. Be careful, and remember, stay classic. Peace.